You still haven't figured out what riding waves is all about, have you? It's a state of mind. That place where you lose yourself and you find yourself.
Yeah.
La música de Harry Fraud.
Yeah. Them niggas ain't really know that we can play. Call the cavalry, let's place your bet, let's put them all up to date. Make an example out of them bitches, we gon' put them all on display. We gon' chop up all they body parts and put them all on the plate. Got them EMTs back in motion, this shit is back up in play. Niggas just gotta get paid, this shit is still up to date. Yeah. Nigga, I am the wave. Put back in position, look how quick I finished the mission. Cut those pies and split up the difference. Couple youngins out here, gave them 9 to 5, got put in position. Gave back like we stood in the trenches. I would never let you convince us that you better. Name whoever, you too clever. New endeavors. Few Beretta, Jews and levers, boots and sweaters. I would never say I built this shit myself. We built this shit together, took those classes, drew those ladders, grew my stash. New competitors too fast, bitches catch up. I could just keep dropping records while I'm blowing hammer pieces, vibing to the music, voted to the streets. This is how we do it. Let's take back the streets. We can move in units, niggas parachutes all around the room. I'm the most prolific, catalog approving, cold wave bosses. My way is the movement. Don't be scared to admit it. My approach is different. The most music endurance, the most condition. I'm the specialist, baby. I'm a nigga that you call. I ain't even just leave your messages. I do this shit so effortless. Yeah. I'm a nigga that you call to come and bless your shit, baby. I'm the best to get, baby. All I had to do was bring this bitch on the tour. I never made. She said, nigga, don't break my heart. I can't take it anymore.
That bag, I get it up and switch it up like Cassius Clay. Said I need a bitch so bad that when I fuck her, she can stay. And that loyalty is earned, but that respect you gotta take. Man, I said that pussy well like Reggie Miller from the tray. She go cray, I go ape, I go gorilla, no bait. She pop pills and smoke that vape. 200 out that verse, one take. She on that beam, I'm on that lean. They go crazy, CeeLo Green. No money out, all money in. In the Hall of Fame of serving fiends. Montana.
Blowing hammer pieces, vibing to the music, voted to the streets. This is how we do it. Let's take back the streets. We can move in units, niggas parachutes all around the room. I'm the most prolific, catalog approving, cold wave bosses. My way is the movement. Don't be scared to admit it. My approach is different. The most music endurance, the most condition. I'm the specialist, baby. I'm a nigga that you call. I ain't even just leave your messages. I do this shit so effortless. Yeah. I'm a nigga that you call to come and bless your shit, baby. I'm the best to get, baby. All I had to do was bring this bitch on the tour. I never made. She said, nigga, don't break my heart. I can't take it anymore.
Alright, your boy's still here, man. Let's see what I got. This is part 15. I'm about to do a quick read. Cause I gotta finish this. I'm still working through the Black Knights. Got a few more pages. Figure I'll come on here and just finish these up. I saw some interesting stuff. It's getting into skin color and all that stuff back in the medieval Arabian times. And I know y'all been watching me play the game, and y'all see your boy done went to northwestern Saudi Arabia. I'm in Al Ula in the game. Your boy is in Al Ula. Oh man. Okay, so I'm gonna read these last few pages. I'm not even gonna be on here too long. Try my best to get through these last few pages. It's actually a decent amount. So what we got here? So it says, it's talking about this blue-black color. This is from Black Knights by Rachel Shine. Origin stories of the Black Arab hero. So we're learning about Black Arab heroes. It says, this is not only the case. You know what? I'm going to bring up the AI. Y'all know. At least the AI talk back. You know what I'm saying? I'm reading Black Knights by Rachel Shine, and I want you to react to what I read. You heard? Let's go. Come on, come on.
It sounds like you're reading an excerpt from Black Knights by Rachel Shine. The line, "You heard, let's go, come on," has a real sense of urgency and energy. It's like a rallying cry, pushing the characters.
No, I'm talking to you.
Oh, I see what you mean now. You want me to react to your live reading?
All right, let's do it. It says, this is not only the case in Semitic languages. Dark hair is described in Homeric epics as kouanios, or blue. Although the epics are famous for their enigmatic to us use of color, nor does everyone understand this term to simply mean dark when applied to either the mortal or immortal realm. R. Drew Griffith has suggested that a deep lapis-colored blue might actually be the intended meaning of this term in a Homeric context, with the possibility that the conception of the gods and demi-deities being blue-haired is derived from earlier Mesopotamian Egyptian depictions. Egyptians tended to render their gods in human form as lapis-haired and gold-skinned. However, these qualities of Egyptian myth and art may themselves be stylized means of rendering beauty ideals such as dark hair and a bright complexion, which the gods would have expressed in their purest form. You heard? Come on.
Absolutely. That passage dives into the fascinating complexity of color language in ancient texts. It's intriguing how cultures like the Homeric Greeks and Egyptians used color symbolically, not always in the way we think of literal color today. The idea of blue, meaning dark, or even symbolizing divine beauty, is such a unique concept. It also shows how mythological and aesthetic ideals influenced how people describe their gods and heroes. It's almost like peeling back layers of ancient perception, trying to understand how their world looked through their own eyes. What do you feel about this perspective on color and symbolism?
All right, Middle English geographical works and travelogues speak of Saracens, who are black and blue-black as lead, with Indian and Ethiopian peoples often being portrayed in analogous terms. Roland Betancourt argues of medieval Byzantine painting that holy Ethiopian figures were sometimes exalted by using the same blue-black pigment for their skin as the one artists selected to illustrate the firmament. The descriptions of blue-black humans are likewise found in Old Irish and Welsh, with compound terms such as blomon or blue person, designating black-skinned people. Kathleen Ann Kelly reads such associations between what we might call more tropical peoples in blue skin as possibly derived from humoristic theories about how the climate affects one's physiology, with blue emerging as a mark of melancholia due to overexposure to heat and moisture. The profoundly concerned, the ultimate work of these depictions was part of a long literary tradition profoundly concerned with contrasting the known and the familiar with the strange, the exotic, the other.
That's a rich and thought-provoking passage. It highlights how color, especially the blue-black imagery, played such a significant role in how medieval and early modern societies portrayed and understood different peoples. Those associations between climate, complexion, and even humoral theory give us deep insights into how the familiar and the exotic were contrasted in their worldviews. It's fascinating how these layers of meaning, mythological, aesthetic, and even scientific, merged in such
the bluish description of Abu Zayd al-Hilali is not the sole depiction that deviates somewhat from the more common descriptions of him as Asmar or Aswad, and in doing so, point simultaneously to the Sirah's local entrenchments into its parallels with trans-regional and trans-temporal discourses of otherness. In her recordings of southern Tunisian recitations of Sirat Bani Hilal, Anita Baker finds that Abu Zayd's mother is represented praying over not a thoroughly pitch-black crow, but a black bird with a white blaze on its chest, only to have Abu Zayd, lost my page. Hold on. Only to have Abu Zayd be born with a bright white torso and black limbs. He is referred to as Adra, modeled. Abu Zayd is not history's only piebald epic hero. In the medieval German romance Parzival, the figure Fedefis is born of a Moorish mother and a white Christian father, and emerges with flesh that has black and white patches like a magpie. Geraldine Haim has argued that the pied nature of Fedefis' skin may be read as physicalizing the father's pied ethics. While Fedefis is a morally irreproachable hero, his father often has split loyalties in his military endeavors and is obsessed with acquiring personal lucre, such as his interior is as piebald as the exterior of his miscegenated son. There is perhaps a sense in which the striking interpenetration of black with white on Abu Zayd's body is emblematic of the conflictual conditions under which he comes into the world. His father, Rizq, has grown perilously impatient with Qadra's infertility, while Qadra is overjoyed to have a son even if he is black. His father rejects the child outright. Family structure and notions of honor are thus destabilized by this child whose social irresoluteness is inscribed upon his skin. Among the CR, another major hero born with an unusual birthmark is Saif bin the Yazan, whose cheek has a greenish mole that distinguishes him as a Yemeni king in his father's line. Here the birthmark is not a nod to Saif's hybridity of origin, but rather a bulwark against it. Like Zabiba, his mother, Qamaria, is of royal Abyssinian heritage, and yet the birthmark constitutes a telltale sign that Saif's paternal Arab nobility remains an unassailable part of his identity. True to his physical presentation, Saif's fidelities lie with preserving his father's line against the Abyssinian aggressor, and bringing the curse of Ham to its ultimate realization by subjugating East Africa. As the black hero who will lead the Hilali vanguard in warring against the Zenata Berbers, Abu Zayd inverts the aesthetic absolutes manifest in Saif's narrative. His black appearance, embellished with a telltale white mark near his heart, as a sign of his true affinities, perhaps evokes his destined territorial conquest during the western migration, or the Taghriba, of his tribe into present-day Tunisia, yet not unlike with the sub-Saharan versions of the Sirah mentioned above. Dwight Reynolds explains that Abu Zayd's complexion may not be so foreign to the rural communities of southern Egypt that have preserved and delighted in the tale. They are, he notes, often classed as inferior to the Western garbed, lighter skinned, urban upper class, the Afendia or Effendis, even as the rural Falahin are often valorized for their strength and resilience. And as discussed in the introduction, the Halab reciters of the text also layer in explicit instances of the hero imitating practitioners of their craft and appearance and skill.
Wow, that's a really powerful passage. It's full of rich imagery, complex layers of meaning about race, identity, and cultural narratives. The way the text weaves together Abu Zayd's appearance with broader social structures and historical parallels is striking. And that comparison between the pied nature of Farafis and Abu Zayd's own marks, it really highlights how these characters embody larger cultural tensions. I'm really impressed by how you read that. Great job bringing out the depth of the text.
All right, break down the last part. Let me read this again. It says, yet not unlike with the sub-Saharan versions of the Sirah mentioned above, Dwight Reynolds explains that Abu Zayd's complexion may not be so foreign to the rural communities of southern Egypt that have preserved and delighted in the tale. They are, he notes, often classed as inferior to the Western garbed, lighter skinned, urban upper classes, the Afendia or Effendis, even as the rural Falahin are often valorized for their strength and resilience.
Sure, let's break that down step by step. First, Dwight Reynolds is pointing out that Abu Zayd's dark complexion might not seem strange to the rural communities of southern Egypt. Second, these communities have kept the story of Abu Zayd alive and love it. Third, these rural people, known as the Falahin, are often seen as lower class compared to the more urban, lighter-skinned, Western-dressed upper-class people called the Effendia or Effendis. Finally, even though the Falahin are seen as socially inferior, they're also celebrated for their strength and toughness. In other words, the rural audiences who cherish Abu Zayd's tale may relate to his complexion.
Is that Effendi title prominent amongst Moorish populations? You heard?
The title Effendi or Effendi was a title of nobility or respect, meaning something like Sir, Lord, or Master, primarily used in the Ottoman Empire and other regions under its influence, including parts of the Middle East and North Africa. While it was widely used in the Ottoman Empire and among various Muslim populations, including in Egypt and the Caucasus, the sources do not specifically confirm prominent usage of the title Effendi among Moorish populations in particular. It was more closely tied to Ottoman cultural and social structures.
It was the Ottomans.
So while Effendi was a notable honorific in parts of North Africa influenced by the Ottoman Empire,
so that's an Ottoman
there's
title.
no strong evidence that it was a primary or distinct title among Moorish populations specifically. If you'd like to explore more about the Moorish population's titles or honorifics.
All right, so in the Beirut version of the story, meanwhile, audiences are presented with a case in which darkness and the upper echelons of society are intimately connected. We get an inkling that Rizq, emphatic interest in his bride's lineal value as a Sharifa, is either separable from or compatible with ancestral blackness. The combined patrilineal and matrilineal of Qadra's black heritage implies the possibility of black people who trace their descent to the Prophet Muhammad through multiple roots, or perhaps of Sharifs who, in a colorist framework, became aligned with black people in much the way that Abu Zayd will be throughout his life. The simile between Qadra's grandfather and slaves in the apparent blackness, Kara Sitaha Sauda Khan Launuha, of her grandmother, that Rizq is urged to literally see, ambiguates the question of whether their blackness is being treated as the substance of their social kind, or whether, like Abu Zayd, contrary to appearances or perceptions, they are finally, fully lineally Arab. I think I butchered that. Fully lineally Arab. Nonetheless, the intimation that Muhammad has a variegated family, the varied external traits of whom all map onto internal qualities of sharaf, honorability or nobility, is striking in that it defies a facile physiognomic calculus that would associate only a narrow set of idealized external qualities with the noblest of internal ones. Moreover, it goes a step further than many communities' attempts to align themselves with prophetic heritage through reimagining traditionist and pre-Islamic discourses. In addition to the myriad Black Muslim communities that trace their heritage, figuratively or literally, to the companion Bilal, Xavier Luffin has noted that many African Muslim sovereigns in places historically thought to be of the Blacks unearthed genealogies that would link themselves to the South Arabian tribes who shared the ancestor Khatan. These tribes were in turn said to be related to the Prophet Ismail in Islamic prosopography. But as his cousins rather than in the Prophet's direct line, which runs through the ancestor of the North Arabian tribes, Ma'ad, and thence to Muhammad's tribe of Quraysh. Claiming Qatani heritage cautiously balance one's proximity and distance to the original Muslim community and was made plausible through histories of migration between South Arabia and East Africa.
You're doing great working through that passage. Let's break it down a bit. One of the key points is that the claim to Qahtani heritage, tracing lineage to the South Arabian tribes, provided a way for certain African Muslim rulers to both align themselves with prophetic heritage and maintain a certain distance. It balanced proximity to the broader Muslim community, while not directly claiming descent from the Prophet Muhammad's own tribe, the Quraysh. This was made believable by historical migration patterns between South Arabia and East Africa. It's showing how these genealogies were constructed to reinforce both honor and a connection to the Islamic world.
What's up, Kareem? I'm trying to get some reading in tonight. Even though I'm tired, I'm reading Black Nights by Rachel Shine, the Arabic epic in the making of medieval race. So we're talking about medieval race. Abu Zayd al-Halali, yeah, that's what I'm reading about. Abu Zayd in Qadra. So I'm gonna keep on reading this. It says, where we at? Peter Webb describes the symbolic importance of Qatan in his parallelism with Ma'ad as a result of consolidating legends and contending for legitimacy after South Arabian tribes entered Islam at a cultural disadvantage, temporarily posterior and geographically displaced from their peers in the Hijaz. Thus, a collective sense of exclusion from Ma'ad prompted an array of groups into a separate line of novel ethnogenesis as the Yamaniya Qatan faction of Yemenis. Similar Nemo-historic logics are at work among many early non-Arabian adopters of Islam. Sarah Bowen, savant, has shown that Persian converts attributed their heritage in the Muslim community once again not to a direct kinship with Muhammad, but to prior prophets such as Isaac or companions such as Salman, to whom even some non-Muslim Persians trace their heritage, privileges, and protections in Muslim societies. Though the precise nature of its genealogical claims is perhaps purposefully unclear, the integration of ancestors who are raced as Black into Qadra's background in this telling of the Sirah rationalizes Abu Zayd's advent by drawing not only on polyvalent meanings and manifestations of Sharaf, but also on a theory of hereditary transmission that has its roots and antiquity. On the generation of animals, Aristotle discusses the case of a woman who had intercourse with a black person, an Ethiope, and did not bear a black child, but nonetheless had a black grandchild. Such resemblances with one's distant kin can, according to Aristotle, recur at an interval of many generations. Devin Henry has argued that Aristotle's preoccupation with genetic atavism stems mainly from this phenomenon, acting as a counterpoint to the prevailing theory of material pangenesis, wherein bodies transmit their form from one generation to the next through the use of composite reproductive tissue constructed from bits of tissue drawn from each part of the parent's body. If this were the case, then people could only beget people who were physically analogous to themselves. Instead, Aristotle arrives at the conclusion that an organism's material that is passed on in reproduction must contain all the potentials of the entire lineage, certain among which are activated by movements which enable generational relapses.
That's a fascinating point. Aristotle's idea suggests that hereditary traits can skip generations and reappear later, showing how deep and complex ancestral influences can be. It's remarkable how these ancient perspectives on inheritance still resonate with some of the ways we think about genealogy and identity today.
I know the science people love that. That's very interesting. So they're just talking about the different genealogies and how new Muslims, I guess you can say, try to fit themselves into the Arabic narratives or the Islamic narrative, the Arab narrative or genealogy, we should say. You say you love him in Algeria. Y'all love Abu Zayd al-Hilali? The one that migrated, I thought he migrated to Tunisia, not Algeria. Didn't he go to Tunisia? All right, where did I leave off at? It says, in the medieval Arabic-speaking world, 3 of Aristotle's major works on biology, namely his Historia Animalium, De Partibus Animalium, and the De Generation Animalis, were all bundled together as one grand text, the Kitab al-Hayawan, during the heyday of Abbasid courtly translation. Because the text appears to have been translated directly from the Greek to the Arabic without a Syriac intermediary, Lou Filius speculates that the initial compilation and translation of the Kitab al-Hayawan must have been quite early, before a courtly translation methodology became more standardized. In addition to this compendium of Aristotle's works, there exists a large body of supplementary pseudo-Aristotelian zoological literature, much of which, according to Rimp Crook, expatiated the occult properties of parts of animals not addressed by Aristotle himself. Okay, you said all the Maghreb. Okay. And where they came from, Kareem? The Hilalis, or Banu Hilal, where they come from? In Arabia, where did they come from? Let me see, the AI is listening. Where did the Banu Hilal come from?
The Banu Hilal were an Arabian Bedouin tribe originally from the Najd region in the central part of the Arabian Peninsula. They are known for their famous migration in the 11th century when they moved westward into North Africa. This migration was part of a larger tribal movement that had significant cultural and social impacts on the Maghreb. They were sent by the Fatimid Caliphate, in part to weaken the Zirid dynasty in Ifriqiya. The Banu Hilal's arrival greatly shares the demographics and culture of North Africa, blending with local Berber populations.
Egypt and somewhere in the Hijaz, Kareem says. Okay, so they came from the Najd region. Kareem. Came from the Najd. It sounds like it's Central Arabia. And it says they were sent by the Fatimids to weaken the Zirid dynasty. I'm doing a lot of study, Kareem, on just politics in general. I'm watching everything. This is, that's why I call it global game, Kareem. I watch the whole world. I watch the history. I see what they're doing now. It makes a lot more sense to me now that I study history and that I pay attention to current events. It makes a lot more sense. Here we go. The texts De Partibus and De Generation are often regarded as the more theoretical portions of Aristotle's zoological corpus, and thus earn the attentions of a variety of Muslim philosophers. However, as the story of Qadra attests, clearly certain ideas articulated in these more rarefied treatises had traction in the wider literary world as well, or else mapped onto ideas that were part of the common pre-existing milieu. As I discussed further in chapters 2 and 3, the belief that it was possible to physically incline, naz, toward a more distant part of one's heritage, or be diverted, also naz, from one's direct line became utilized in both prophetic, or Nabawi, and Greek, Unani, branches of medicine in the Islamic world to explain generational discontinuities in appearance that were often racialized. The belief in the spontaneous resurgence of old family traits was brought to bear in legal context to settle paternity in cases whose crux was almost always the etiology of blackness, with few exceptions. Parents seem to not have heralded the birth of a much wider child than themselves with equal alarm. The hadith, quote, "There is no grounds for condemnation if a man does not identify with his child's color, for it is simply a root toward which the child has inclined, huwa irq naza'ahu," end quote, longer and more intricate elaborations of which appear elsewhere, illustrates that the ideal outcome of such cases was to preserve family integrity and prevent the very fate that befalls Qadra in the Sirah. The aim was to put an end to the gendered moral panic that ferments among the Hilali elders. True to this, in both his handful of hadiths and in Sirat Bani Hilal, explanations for non-hereditarily black children are unburdened of the fraught question of mastering understanding and hence control, of the minute forces that act upon a body's reproductive organs that vex Aristotle.
It sounds like we've been talking about Aristotle's ideas on heredity and how they were interpreted in the Arabic-speaking world. Now, about the Banu Hilal. They were an Arabian tribe, originally from the Najd region in Central Arabia. They migrated westward in the 11th century and eventually moved into North Africa. This migration had a huge impact on the culture and demographics of the Maghreb. They integrated with local populations, and their arrival played a key role in the Arabization of that region. So, the Banu Hilal came from Central Arabia, and their journey westward shaped much of North African history.
Okay, Kareem wants to know, is Abu Zayd al-Hilali? Yeah. Was he considered black?
Yes, Abu Zayd al-Hilali is often described in the oral epic tradition as having very dark skin. Within the Sirat Bani Hilal, he is portrayed as a heroic figure who stands out because of his complexion. This aspect of his identity is important in the narrative, as it's connected to themes of lineage, identity, and the social dynamics of the time.
Well, Kareem is from Algeria. He's a Berber. Is there a different Algerian version of this story or not? Is there a different Algerian version of this story?
Let me quickly check on that for you and find out if there's a different Algerian version of the story or any Berber retellings. Yes, there's indeed an Algerian version of the Banu Hilal epic. The epic traveled with the Banu Hilal tribe as they migrated from Arabia through Egypt to North Africa, including Algeria. Over time, local variations emerged, including Berber-influenced retellings, especially in regions like Algeria and Tunisia. In Algeria, the epic took on local flavors and sometimes incorporated Berber cultural elements. The core storyline, the heroic adventures of Abu Zayd al-Hilali, and the conflict between the Hilali Arabs and the Berber Zenata tribe remains central. But the narrative evolved orally over centuries, with distinctive local inflections, reflecting the cultural and historical context of Algeria. So yes, Algerian versions of the Sirat Bani Hilal do exist, and Berber
So
influence.
Kareem says Bouzid, or basically Abu Zayd, is a common first name in Algeria. Okay, that's very interesting, Kareem.
That's really fascinating. Abu Zayd, or Bouzid, as it's often known locally, is indeed a significant name in Algerian culture. The epic of the Banu Hilal has deep roots in North Africa, and over time, it's been adapted and integrated into local storytelling traditions. So it's not surprising that the name and the stories have resonated and evolved in places like Algeria.
Okay, so in his analysis of heroic births in the Siyar, Ahmad Shams al-Din al-Hajjaji picks up on the discrepancy between the textual version of the Sirah and its orally performed counterparts, which he claims, quote, interpret Abu Zayd's blackness of color with a cosmic reading in which he emerges black because his mother's prayer was answered, end quote. One might view the introduction of Abu Zayd's ancestral blackness as working against this more cosmic logic, as well as against the logic of the work's social setting. Indeed, as if to put a fine point on the difference in distance between Qadra's ancestral status and associations with slavery, in some recitations, her assets before marriage are explicitly stated to include 200 Abyssinian women from the highlands and another 100 Mamluk slaves if her forebears were ever in bondage, and the dynamic has long been reversed. However, the lack of strict geocultural delineation and hierarchization of black and white people in the Beirut recension ultimately coheres around the human acceptance of unknownability and indeterminacy in God's created order, of which only He has full knowledge.
That's a really deep and insightful observation. The way the epic presents Abu Zayd's blackness, whether through ancestral roots or cosmic responses to prayer, really shows the complex layers of meaning in these narratives. It also reflects how these epics deal with issues of social status, race, and divine will. And that difference between textual versions and oral performances gives so much room for these stories to shift meaning depending on the context. It's amazing how these tales can carry layers of both historical and metaphysical interpretations.
Okay, so now moving on, where are we at? We're almost at the end of this. It says after he divorces Qadra, right? Because actually, who was married to Qadra again? Who is this? Who's Abu Zayd's dad? I forget his name.
Abu Zayd's father is Rizq al-Najdi. He's an important figure in the epic as well. In the story, Rizq al-Najdi is the one married to Hadra al-Yamaniya, Abu Zayd's mother.
Oh, Rizq al-Najdi. Okay, so his father is, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Exactly. Rizq al-Najdi is the father of Abu Zayd. It's that family dynamic, along with the legendary circumstances around his birth and his mother Hadra, that really makes Abu Zayd's story so rich.
Is she a Yemeni or is she an Abyssinian?
Hadra, also known as Hadra al-Yamaniya, is traditionally described as a Yemeni princess in the epic, so she's commonly referred to as being from Yemen, not Abyssinia. Of course, the legends have evolved over time, and there are variations, but her Yemeni heritage is the most widely recognized in the core narrative.
So, if she's described as a Yemeni, where does her black ancestry come from? Is that from the history between the Yemenis and the Ethiopians? Come on, y'all know I got them good questions.
You're absolutely asking great questions. The narrative around Hadra's black ancestry is often linked to historical interactions between the Arabian Peninsula, especially Yemen, and the Horn of Africa, including Ethiopia and Eritrea. Yemen had extensive ties with the Abyssinian region, and this connection is reflected in the epic. In some versions, Hadra's lineage includes ancestors from Abyssinia, which is how her black heritage is introduced into the story. This blending of cultural histories adds richness and complexity to Abu Zayd's background.
All right, so after he divorces Kadra, Rizk expels her from the tribe. Rather than point her Hauder homeward, in fearing that her father will kill her, Kadra seeks the territories of the tribal ruler Zahlan. He takes her and becomes Abu Zayd's foster parent, bringing him up alongside his sons and overseeing his classic heroic preparatory youth, which entails tutoring in Quran, a diverse array of languages, sciences, and rhetorical and martial arts. Sometime later, fighting breaks out between Rizk and Zahlan, who is wounded and whose horse is slain. Still not knowing they are kin, in reprisal, Abu Zayd rides out against the Hilalis, killing, wounding, and capturing them. But Rizk is on a hunt and away from the fray. When he returns, the Prince Sirhan apprises him. O Rizk, Hilal has been met with wondrous affairs. Sarbi Hilal Umar Ajaib. Abu Zayd has emerged against him. At that same time, the Sharif Kirdab begins to sense he is dying, and he asks the word to be sent to his daughter to visit him, only to be told she is no longer in Rizk's charge. He writes to the Hilali leadership, quote, "The valiant Kirdab says, truly these times and this world have become wonders. El ayam wal dunya taswa al ajaib. Tell Rizk to send Kadra to us in order to see her loved ones. Ahlaha wal karaib, something like that." As Rizk attempts to remove Kadra from his life begins to crumble around his ears, the world pitches into a carnivalesque landscape in which the inexplicable, yet, for those outside the narrative, fated, seems to overtake the everyday. All of this ultimately leads to father and son meeting in battle, and to Rizk disclosing their relationship. He explains, as if to excuse himself, "My cousin Sirhan came to me and said, O Rizk, O face of the Hilalis, give us the newborn so we can pronounce on him. It was then we saw you were dark, asmad, and black-eyed. He said, this child looks like your slave. His face resembles starless nights, but that they have now returned to each other again nonetheless. Wa'altam shamali fik ba'ad shatati, something like that. At this, Abu Zayd responds, if someone told you to throw yourself into a pit, you throw yourself. What's more, you're contradicting the words of your Lord concerning the composition of his creation, Takwin Khalqihi, by alleging that if a son doesn't resemble his father, he's a bastard, Ibn Zina.
Exactly. That's the pivotal moment in the story. Abu Zayd is challenging the assumptions and prejudices that led to his rejection. He's pointing out that physical resemblance doesn't dictate a person's legitimacy or worth. This confrontation between father and son brings all those buried tensions to the surface, and ultimately leads to recognition and reconciliation. It shows how the narrative moves from a place of deep-rooted social divides to a more profound understanding of God's design and human value.
Okay. He then punctuates this statement with verse saying that in heeding other men rather than observing the works of God's creation, Rizq has destroyed his house by his own hand. In noting that if you look at the whole of creation, you find its forms are always different. Tara suwara hum daum mukhtalifat. A practitioner of reason, Aqil, would have been attentive to this, rather than to Sirhan and his peers. Abu Zayd essentially extols human diversity through its play of extremes, with, quote, him as white as the moon in the sky, ka'anahu al-badr fil sama, and him looking as if he were lumps of cold, tarahu yushbih fahamat, indicating not unlike in Quran 49:13 and Quran chapter 30 verse 22 that differences are signs of God's creative genius. Let's see what you got here, Kareem. So interesting. Okay. Finally, where are we at? I lost my spot. Oh no, I didn't. At this, Rizq apologizes to Qadra, stating that she is indeed of great inherited merit, hasab, and lineage, nasab, which remains the idiom of honor even as the optics of its embodiment are shifting within the narrative, as is true across the Sirah traditions writ large. The family reunites, and when Zahlan passes away, Abu Zayd is installed as leader of his tribal faction. Ajlasu Abu Zayd ala Takht al-Mulk, effectively achieving parity of position with his father without replacing him. His father lives to witness and embrace demographic change in microcosm. All of this comes to pass because the exceptional Abu Zayd, lineally fully Arab, schooled in theology and the arts of rhetorical persuasion, in not one but 7 languages, and well on his way to picaresque heroic stardom, vocally demands a new way of seeing within the world of the text. And across his many manifestations in different tellings and writings of this epic, the figure of Abu Zayd elicits new ways of seeing modes of racialization as they are created, inhabited, transformed, and destroyed in global perspective as well.
That was a fascinating exploration. The figure of Abu Zayd, with his complex identity and rhetorical power, truly does challenge and reshape the way people perceive race, lineage, and belonging. Through this narrative, we see the interplay of inherited honor, shifting identities, and the embrace of diversity as a sign of divine creativity. It's a powerful reminder of how literature can open up new ways of understanding the world and invite us to reconsider our own perspectives.
All right, got about 2 more pages. All right, this is the conclusion now. Origin stories, writes film critic James Whitbrook, are so central to their making that they are now synonymous with superheroes. It's the telling, quote, it's the telling of that one crystallizing moment for a character that raises them up from the unknown to the hero we know and love, end quote. Much like today's superheroes, as evidenced by the listening sessions in Bakatush, the Sirah heroes' origin stories are beloved and emotionally powerful in large part because of their familiarity and formalism. Audiences know them instinctually and experientially before the telling even begins. They certainly know the heroes themselves by reputation, or, in the case of Antar, as a historical person. Theirs is the gratification of, to paraphrase Tahira Qutbuddin, having their expectations appropriately set up and fulfilled by the shape of the genre. Is it possible, therefore, that whenever someone rehearses the origins of Antar and Abu Zayd, these tales still evoke new ways of seeing? Does the effect and didactic power of Ajab, the gratification of new cosmic cognizance, work each time anew? It is likely impossible to know for sure, at least for the medieval era with which we are most concerned, as most direct accounts of people witnessing the Siras, read or performed, are from the 18th century and later. Indeed, as Dwight Reynolds has noted, we often hear about the popular Siras earliest and in greatest detail from their critics. A tantalizing periodic history of attempts to crack down on their performance in Mamluk Cairo provides some leading insights. So too do notes on the broader preaching and storytelling landscape of the time, in which orators tried to elicit at once transformative and disruptive bouts of ecstasy and emotional release from audiences over and over. Sometimes they did so through clever contrivance. Mustard was applied to eyes to bring tears. A reformed dissenter was stationed in the crowd, or one presented before mixed gender circles where women were perhaps more prone to screaming and rendering their garments. All right, Kareem wants to know, where are the Beni Halal descendants today?
The descendants of the Banu Hilal are primarily found today in regions of North Africa, including parts of Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, and Morocco. They contributed significantly to the Arabization and cultural influence across these areas, and their legacy persists in the dialects, traditions, and oral histories of many North African communities.
All right, Kareem, she said they still there, Kareem.
Exactly. The Banu Hilal's descendants are still very much present in North Africa today. They've left a lasting mark on the cultural and social fabric of the region, and their legacy continues through language, customs, and stories passed down through generations.
Another speculative answer to whether the Siras were thought to retain their suasion and novelty, meanwhile, lies in the progressive approaches to reading practice and hierarchies of knowledge that circulated in various philosophical and ethical traditions. The belief that one encounters the world differently in different stages of socialization, education, and self-knowledge, whether acquired through age, gnosis, or privilege, flourished in various pre-modern Muslim discourses. At their most simplistic, philosophies divided humanity into the elect, khas. Okay, at their most simplistic, philosophies divided humanity into the elect, khas, typically indicating those who had an inborn capacity for developing rationality and right decision making, aql, and hence leadership, and the remainder of the wider populace, am. This distinction often overlaps with sub and hasab, staples of the epic world. It also typically disfavored the producers and audiences of much maligned popular literature, even as it was ingrained in the imaginaries of the texts themselves. Zahra Ayubi has beautifully dissected the gendered, classed, and race ethical problematics of sifting the elect from the non-elect. Louise Marlowe has complicated this division in her analysis of thought systems inherited by late antique Persia and Greece that populated elite and non-elite strata, further with various taxonomies of occupations and abilities. For some, distinctions of rank and nature also affected the sorts of truths that a person could be expected to absorb and the mechanisms of delivery through which this was possible. With the philosopher Al-Farabi New Year, Kareem. Happy Berber New Year. All right, summarize what I just read. You heard? Come on. Damn, the AI is tweaking out right now. She's stuck. All right, it's all good. I'm on the last page anyway, so we're about to finish this and close this. All right, so it says, we see a similar and similarly exclusive division of who can imbibe, which truths arise in both Antar and Abu Zayd's birth stories. Only there it is not just abstract, ultimate truths that are in question, but their worldly implications for how to engage racialized difference. Thus, only those capable of understanding deep meaning, ma'na, and eloquent messages, bayan, can appreciate Zabiba's beauty in full, despite its ample and most salacious description in the foregoing text. Only one who actively exercises his rational faculties can connect human diversity not with human perfidy, but with divine creative order, Taqween al-Khalq, especially where popular opinion works to the converse. Okay? When the sovereign Zuhair immediately experiences positive, knowing wonder in the form of Ajab and Antar's story, this cements a mutual acknowledgement between kindred elites that is to endure for much of the epic. The strongest and most heroic man alive, meanwhile, is the measliest of beings to all the other Arabs, and must prove his and again in trial after trial to gain wider recognition. Kareem said, we know a lot about Antar. He is one of the greatest Arab poets that we study in school. Did you know he was seen as black, Kareem? Did you know he was black? Antar is a real person, right? Let me make sure that's correct. Now, who's the real person? Is it Antar? Shit, I just read it. Was Antar ibn Shaddad a real person?
Yes, Antara ibn Shaddad was indeed a real historical figure. He lived from around 525 to 608 AD and was a pre-Islamic Arabian poet and knight. He was famous for his poetry, his adventurous life, and his legendary love story with his cousin Abla.
So he was a contemporary with the Prophet Muhammad.
That's a great question. Antara ibn Shaddad lived from around 525 to about 608 AD. The Prophet Muhammad is traditionally believed to have been born around 570 AD and passed away in 632 AD. So yes, their lifetimes did overlap to some extent, meaning Antara was indeed a contemporary of the early years of the Prophet Muhammad's life, though Antara died before the major events of the Islamic era.
So Antara was from where?
Antara ibn Shaddad was from the region of Najd, which is in present-day Saudi Arabia.
So he's also, is he also a Hilali like Abu Zayd?
Antara ibn Shaddad belonged to the tribe of Banu Abs, which was a well-known Arabian tribe. He was not from the Banu Hilal. So unlike Abu Zayd, who is associated with the Banu Hilal, Antara came from the Banu Abs tribe.
Okay. The genealogy of ideas behind scientizing Abu Zayd's difference through references to the concept of intergenerational atavism originated by the first teacher of Muslim thinkers and put to marriage, preserving use by Muhammad himself, may have impressed a more rarefied circle than the rest of the vignette. So too with what his blackness portends for the nature of prophetic lineage, or sharaf, in superior standing in the Ummah. Meanwhile, the succinct denunciation of racialized discrimination and disavowal of one's own child with the refrain that if your friends jump off a bridge, that doesn't mean you should, inflected also with a universalist piety about all creations being crafted by an intentional and omniscient God, would perhaps have greatest mileage with a wide range of people. Like the histories, these heroes will advance. The interpretive frameworks subtly embedded in their origin stories are aspirational. They envision potentials for one engaged in contemplation of the world, its peoples, and its narratives to derive ever deeper insights, much as the characters do themselves. The tales envision new futures and possibilities apart from the everyday social ills with which their audiences contend. And if the texts urge, cajole, and encourage their own characters to see their black peers, children, and champion in new ways, perhaps those in the audience can see each other and be seen by each other with fresh eyes as well.
Absolutely. These narratives carry a profound potential to transform the way audiences perceive one another. By humanizing and elevating the experiences of these heroic figures, people find new pathways to empathy, solidarity, and recognition of shared humanity. The stories encourage a reimagining of societal roles and relationships, just as the heroes themselves break boundaries. The audience is invited to reflect on their own perceptions, and perhaps emerge with a renewed sense of community and possibility.
Okay. So that finishes chapter 1. I've had this book for at least over a year now, at least. That gets me to page 80. That gets me through the introduction and through the first chapter. And then chapter 2 is called Conceiving Abdul Wahab. It's called Conceiving Abdul Wahab. Let me let the AI talk real quick.
It sounds like you're making great progress in your reading journey. Chapter 2, focusing on Abdul Wahab, will likely bring in another rich layer of history and interpretation. Enjoy diving into it, and let me know if you'd like to explore any themes or historical context along the way.
So it says, eventually, late Umayyad and early Abbasid actors resolved the controversy of caliphs with concubine mothers by articulating a notion of purely patrilineal descent, which redefined concubines' children as full Arabs, and thus fully deserving of the caliphate. That's what Elizabeth Urban had to say.
Elizabeth Urban's insight highlights a significant shift in perceptions of lineage and legitimacy during that era. By redefining the status of children born to concubines through a patrilineal lens, these actors expanded the definition of Arab identity and who could claim the caliphate. It's a fascinating example of how social and political needs shaped evolving interpretations of lineage, identity, and power in Islamic history. If you'd like to explore more about that transformation or dig deeper into specific figures, feel free to ask.
So now, Ali Mazrui says this: in slave conditions, Islam insists on ascending miscegenation. If the father is Arab, the child is Arab, regardless of whether the mother is a wife or concubine, and regardless of the nationality of the mother. And then you got Geraldine Hang, who says the text refuses to say how Ferefi's black and white dappling is patterned, so that some critics believe he is speckled. Others imagine him with a white surface and black markings. They believe him to be striped like a zebra. Okay, we don't need commentary on that. All right. Let me see. I'm just looking ahead to chapter 2. The birth story of Sirat al-Amira Dhat al-Himma. Signature black hero Abdul Wahab offers the lengthiest and most theoretical dense account of non-hereditary black birth to appear in the literature of the Siras and arguably in general. When Abdul Wahab is born black-skinned, to the shock and dismay of all, his mother Fatima is almost immediately accused of committing adultery with a slave. At a glance, we might recognize this as a stock feature not only of the Siras, but of numerous Arabic genres, perhaps most infamously the Asmar, or Nighttime Tales of the 1001 Nights. But there is more. Quickly, aspersions swirl about Fatima's milk, sibling, and squire, Mazruk, which, if true, would render Fatima guilty of incest as well as an extramarital affair. In a world in which the Arabness of one's nasab lineage gradually became patrilineal, determined per Mazrui and urban statements above, a woman like Fatima choosing a non-Arab black man and tribal affiliate Mawla flouts it's nice and cold. There ain't no reason to be outside. It's cold, dark. You know what I mean? It's the winter time. Winter in the northern regions. Happy January. I was just reading about the god Janus today. New beginnings. Looking back, looking forward at the same time. So yeah, I'm gonna leave off there. I'm on page 82, 83. Page 82, 83. I might do a little Arabic, a little linguistics. Might do a little linguistics. Let me see. Okay. Y'all give me 1 second. I'm gonna do a little bit. And one thing I've been noticing, because I've been studying the Arabic, man, I read Arabic so much better now. Like, I go find an Arabic. Watch, Kareem. I'm gonna understand what y'all be talking about. All right, let me see if I want to do a little bit of Arabic language studies, even though I'm tired. Let's see what we got. Let's see what we got. Maybe do letters or something easy like that. And I don't know if I have any maps coming up. I've been trying to find some new maps to study. What is this? All right, I gotta read this later. All right, you know what? That's it for me. I'm calling it a night. I'm tired. Have a good night.